What I'm going to do is introduce Donald Trump Jr., who's going to come out and share with you why his father's vision is the only vision for this country, and it's going to be what makes America great again. Thank you.
How are 40% of the club women? It's okay, we got to work on the title a little bit, but it's great to be here. Thank you so much, guys. It's been just incredibly exciting to be just a small part of this process, and to be able to be a small cog in the wheel has just been a real honor for me. And as I go around the country, the enthusiasm that I see from so many people, such as yourselves, who've really been a part of, people would say part of the campaign, but it's not really the campaign anymore. It's a movement. And it's a movement because I watch my father, and I see him, and I go around with him, although these days I don't spend that much time with him, because when he's in an area, it sort of creates a vacuum. There's no reason to have two Trumps in one space at one time. So we spread out, but I go around, and I see him speaking to groups like this, although a little bit bigger. It's usually about 10, 15, 20,000 people, 2, 3, 4 times a day. I don't know about you guys. I'm older than I'd like to admit at this point, but I don't think in our lifetimes we've seen something like that, where a politician is able to get people to stand outside in a line for 10 hours in a New Hampshire winter that we saw in the primary, to hear a vision for America. And I think it's because really people are sick of what's going on in this country. And while this may be the Republican Party club, I think it's from both sides of the aisle. This is a partisan problem. People are sick of politicians in D.C. telling them what they should do. They're sick of bureaucrats that are isolated in Washington telling them what should be going on in their backyards when they can't fathom what's going on there. And in an election that's been one of change, we saw that even in the primary on the other side with Bernie Sanders, this has been an election for change. The other side was so corrupt and rigged it and gave Hillary Clinton the answers for debates and what the questions were going to be, so that you could put arguably the most corrupt candidate in the history of American politics and give them the Democratic nomination. This whole thing has been about change, and that's what my father's here for. That's why he's doing this, because if there's one thing he doesn't need, it's this job. I think we can all admit that. I mean, he knows what comes with that job. He knows what's going to happen. He knows the stones that are going to be thrown. Sort of amazing that in a 40-year career, where he's, I'd say he wasn't exactly hiding in the rafters somewhere. He's been pretty out there. In a 40-year career, all of a sudden you're going up against the Hillary Clinton corruption machine, and with 25 days, all these miraculous things appear. No one's buying it anymore. People are fed up with that. And what's even worse is that the media won't talk about the things that have gone on while she was Secretary of State, that continue to go on. You see the stuff that was leaked today in the O'Keefe videos. When you have Democratic high-level operatives paying people to go incite violence at Trump rallies throughout the primary, and guess what? It's crickets. They don't even talk about it. Imagine what would happen if one of you guys was doing that. If a conservative was doing that. It's disgusting. But there is hope. We are doing so well, and I see it because as I've traveled this country, and I've had the privilege to be a small part of it, people are coming up to me, and not just the people that the media would like you to believe are the Trump voters, people of all demographics, all age groups, men, women, Latinos, African Americans, and they're coming up to me and they're thanking me for allowing my father to do this. To those people I say, you may not exactly know my father, but I appreciate where you're going with this, because I don't know that anyone's going to allow him to do anything. But it's these people who have been so disaffected with the political system, people who haven't ever voted in their lives. I've seen it day in and day out. I've incorporated it into my speech because it happens once, you say, oh, big deal. It happens twice. When it happens hundreds of times, people coming up to me and saying, Don, I'm 25, I'm 35, I'm 45, I'm 55. I will say, I had a guy last week, 83, came up to me. All of these people are saying, we've never voted in our lives. I was like, man, really? Never.
But you know what? I get it. I sort of get it. They've been promised, they hear promises on all sides, and guess what they never see? They never see action. They hear a lot of words, but they never see action. They never see conviction. They never see people willing to stand up, and we've seen that on both sides. Everyone beats their chest really loud, and when they get on the floor to vote, guess what happens? They fold. They give up. You saw it with, poor Bernie Sanders. He was against Hillary Clinton and all these things. Now he's part of the team. He's been bought and paid for. He bought a nice weekend house on the shore. People are sick of corrupted politicians, and that's what this whole thing's been about. And so we're running against the worst of the worst when it comes to corruption, when it comes to scandal. And no one even's talking about it, but what's great is that so many people, like yourselves, they're out there. They're pushing for it. And I see it time and time again. And that's what's exciting for me. It's that look of hope in people's eyes as they come up to me. Some of them just outspoken saying, you guys are doing a great job, we can't wait to vote for you. Some of them saying, you guys are doing a great job, because they've been put in a corner. The media's created this narrative, and this isn't a fight about one candidate versus another. If we were running against this candidate and her track record, it'd be over a long time ago. But when you're running against a political correct society, when you're running against mainstream media, it's not as easy a fight. But there are so many people, day in and day out, that are there, that I really think we're going to see something special on November 8th. I think you see it with some of the absentee and early voting that's taking place, in Florida with those ballots coming in. People are fed up, and I know you guys are as well. And that's... So I just want to thank you guys for all of your help, because you're a part of this movement. You're a part of what's going to make America great again. You're a part of what's going to preserve the fundamental freedoms that we've grown to love and that we want our children and grandchildren to be able to see. This isn't just a fight about the next 4 or 8 years. This is a fight about the next 30 or 40 years. If you have a liberal justice that's put on the Supreme Court, the America that we know and love is going to be a fundamentally different kind of place. So when you're speaking to people, when you're going out there, when you're making the phone calls that I know you're all doing, and you better all do it. There's only 23 days left, so I figure you can make at least 100 calls a day. At least. Okay? That's a small number. I mean, I was with, where was I? I don't even remember where I was last week, but I was with a young kid, couldn't even vote yet. I think she was 15, 16 years old, and she had made 987 phone calls on behalf of Trump. A young girl, I think she was up in Ohio doing this, and that's what it's been about. It's been a movement of the people, by the people, and for the people, and that's what government used to be founded on. Now it's of the elite, by the elite, for the elite, and if you're against them, God help you. But you're going to change that. And on November 8th, once you make all those phone calls, once you take advantage of that, and remember, get all your friends to register who haven't maybe registered, or people who've, again, been disaffected, because today is the last day that you can do that in Nevada. But you guys are all a part of this special movement, and I'm just humbled to be a part of it. It's been amazing to be able to go around the country for these last 18 months and see hardworking Americans who've been left in the dust. But again, I know you're going to see a surprise this year, because the blue-collar union workers that know their bosses have been bought and paid for generations, those guys that are coming up to me, and those men and women that helped build this country, that they're coming up to me and say, hey, we know what's in it. We know what's going on. We understand how this system has been rigged, and we're voting for you guys. I hear it way too often. It's not an anomaly, okay? It's not a little blip. This isn't basis points. These are real big numbers. So you guys are all a part of that. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the media that's putting it out there. They're trying to suppress that vote and get rid of the enthusiasm. But there's no way there's an enthusiasm gap not in our favor when I look at the numbers of people that my father's hitting and speaking and reaching every day. Okay, it's exactly the opposite. Hillary Clinton, with 2 weeks' notice and paid volunteers, couldn't fill up this room. Okay, there's a difference there. Thank you for everything that you guys are doing. It's an honor to be a part of it. I really appreciate it. Maybe I'll take a couple questions from the audience. Give the microphone. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
We're going to have questions, but you have to come up to the mic. There's 2 mics.
Take the mic.
Dave, can you walk it, or Jennifer? One at a time. Stand up now.
Need to have him stay on message.
He will. He's going to stay on message, but part of that is also he's a fighter. My father's a fighter. He's always been a fighter, and he's fighting for the American people right now. That's what this is. So he's not going to back off and hide in a corner. That's what the other guys have done. That's what politicians have done. That's a typical politician. So he'll do that, but he's also got to bring up the stuff that the media won't cover, because they're not covering so many of these faults. They're not covering
politics. You know, they're not covering the fact that we're literally selling America to the highest bidder. You know, and when I look at our opponent, I say, you know, the people who are voting for, which policy are they voting for? The one that's in private or the one that's for public? Because I don't know, but I have a feeling I know, because as a public servant, which I know a lot of, and I've gotten to know a lot more over the last 18 months, I don't know any public servants that have been lifelong public servants who are worth $250 million. So I have a feeling our opponent will vote for whoever wrote the bigger check. And you can see that stuff's coming out as well in the WikiLeaks. Yes, sir.
I have a comment. Can you hear me?
I can hear. I can also repeat.
I have a comment, and I wanted to say a dividend to this election is that you inspire us. You personally inspire us. Your brothers and sisters have inspired us, and I do think the dividend is that you're inspiring a generation of young people like you to change this country and put it back on track. And I want to thank you.
Part of that, and hopefully other people that are young, because that's what this is about. I'm the father of 5 young kids. I have a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, about to be 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and I want to make sure that we're handing them an America that's better than the one that we inherited. And right now, this is the first generation where that's not happening. Thank you.
I've got a question regarding your dad. Do you think he'll take the advice of his advisors? And I know he's going to surround himself with competent people, which he's done to create the successful enterprise he's created. But will he take the advice of his advisors? I'm just curious.
I think 100%. When you look at my father's career, and you look at the fact that he's been in 40 years in business, he's done it through all sorts of different kinds of businesses, not just in real estate, but outside of that, you can't have a track record of success without being able to listen to others. Right? You can be a bull in a china shop, and sometimes you need to be a bull in a china shop. Especially when you're going up against, again, not just a candidate, but a media machine, PC culture, all of the stuff that's piling on to my father. But you can't do what he's done in life, in business. You can get away with it once by being the bull in a china shop. You can maybe get away with it twice, but guess what? Third time, people are going to be onto you. So you do have to be able to listen to people. You do have to be able to bring in people with a different perspective. You have to be able to trust them. Trust but verify, as Reagan said. Right, so I've seen him do that time and time again. He brings in the best, and what's been interesting about this, and perhaps to the gentleman's point right before, you know, my father's inspired a lot of other people, a lot of business minds that have reached out to him, who would never otherwise think of running for office, who would never subject themselves, you know, to the media scrutiny, to the craziness that's going on, to the lopsided bias that's so obvious and that everyone sees. But they're coming up to him and say, you know what, Donald, you've inspired me. The fact that you're doing this, the fact that you're taking all that heat. You know, I may not want to run for office, but I want to help you fix X, Y, Z because I've done it for my life. I've made a good fortune. I get what's going on. I see where the gridlock is. I see where the corruption is. I see where the inefficiency is, and I want to help you break that up. So I think what's unique about this candidacy is it's not going to be the same recycled set of bureaucrats. Just put in another position, and we'll see it again. And without accountability, we're going to have guys that have actually done it in the real world. Because guess what? All of you know this. There's a big difference between theory and practice. A big difference between theory and practice. And all these politicians who talk about job creation, how many of them have ever created a job? How many of them have ever signed the front of a paycheck as opposed to the back? Almost, I'd say almost zero, close to zero. And so, you know, that's what's going to be different about this time around. And I think, you know, and so to your point, I mean, I think without question, you couldn't do what my father has done without being able to also listen to others and take that advice. Thank you.
So I want to thank you, Donald, for joining me today. I have to tell you that this is the first time I've ever donated money to a campaign.
Thank you.
I believe in your father. I pray that he wins. And my comment is only that I think it's already been said, when he takes things so personally, instead of doing that, follow the lead of Newt Gingrich when he was asked at one point about his affair with his wife, and would he like to answer that question? And he said, no, but I will. And he kind of flipped it and said it was absolutely almost deplorable.
You know, and I agree. Like I said, we do want to focus on the issues, but unlike what we've seen from so many of our politicians, my father is a fighter. He's going to fight for the American people, and that's why, you know, an unlikely guy when you think about it. I mean, you know, to have blue-collar America being a big supporter. I mean, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we set the all-time GOP record for small dollar donations. Okay. $63 average donation. And by the way, that's from people who didn't do that $63 all at once. They did 20 here, another 15 here, another 20 here when they could. And that to me means we're reaching the people that need to be reached. The people in America who haven't had a voice in so long. Because guess what? That $63 to that person or to that family meant a lot more than the $1 million check from some partner at Goldman Sachs who's just buying a place in line to make sure that they get what they want later on. And so that's how I know we're reaching the people that matter. That's how I know that, while he can be tough, while he can be contentious, that's what the American people want to see. They want to see someone actually fight for them. Not just talk about it, not just stump on it and fold, but someone who's actually going to come through for them for the first time in a long time.
Hi, I'm Juanita Cox. I'm the State Republican Assembly President. I'm also went to Cleveland, and I'm also one of Nevada's electoral votes for your father.
Ah, very nice.
What I would like to have your father do tomorrow night is bring some of the families of Benghazi, some of the mothers, and see what...
The Smiths are going to be there tomorrow, and just so you know, Tig was at the second debate, who's a friend of mine, and Mark Geist, who's a very good friend of mine, was with me most of this week, and I'm a big hunter and fisherman, outdoorsman. I was with Mark for 10 days in the Yukon. I mean, I know exactly what's going on with them in that situation. Mark was at the first debate, as our guest. So, we've been talking about it again. It's one of these things the media doesn't want to cover. They don't want to give it the justice it deserves because, the other side, they were looking to do that as a foreign policy win. We're going to have this thing and but I can assure you one thing. My father's not going to leave Americans behind to get some sort of artificial foreign policy win so that he can drive There's been people that have been involved in Benghazi in each of the debates, and there will be, again tomorrow. They've become good friends, and while, again, no one's given it the coverage that it deserves, it's disgusting and it won't happen on our watch.
Sir.
My name is Mobashir Ahmed, and I'm a U.S. Army veteran.
Thank you.
And peacetime Army, not war. Okay, but your father has basically this last debate to present his views to the American public, and thus far, the tangents have taken up a lot of the time. My suggestion would be, he is your father, is not to discuss anything regarding the, what we all know about.
Yeah.
What I would like, and what the American people really would like to know, is the underemployment in our country.
Yeah, of course.
And to put forth here two options. One is environmental degradation tax when we import stuff from China. Because let me tell you, our planet is pretty small. These environmentalists, I'm an environmental manager here. When they make steel in China, we will get the pollution sooner or later. But in the meantime, we lose jobs. So there should be an environmental degradation tax. There should be a wage disparity tax. And this money should be put into a fund so we can develop our economy here.
Well, I agree. My father's been talking about a lot of those things for quite some time. And again, he's come up with some pretty revolutionary policies, certainly even for conservatives, right? When you talk about the plans that he had for early child care support, that no one in the GOP has ever heard of, but we did that. And guess what? It's crickets from the media, because guess what? It's revolutionary, but we're recognizing that women make up 51, 52% of the workforce in this country. So we have to be able to, understand how, that operates. But again, we put forth policy. We put forth a policy that wants to infuse $20 billion into inner city schools to make sure that those children get the same sort of advantages that perhaps people fortunate like myself have been blessed with, to be able to get a good education, hopefully break that cycle of poverty. But it's crickets about that. So we have spoken about a lot of these things and making sure that we bring jobs back to this country. So I think if Americans experienced all of the dignity work and not have underemployment largely due to Obamacare, but those people who companies and small businesses can't afford to give them these ridiculous health care premiums that are doubling and tripling in all these areas. So they say, guess what? You're no longer working 40 hours a week. You're now working 25 or 30 hours a week. So that same family is now making, let's call it 25% less than they were otherwise making. They can't get by. They're struggling. They're still considered employed. The people who aren't employed but have been looking for work for more than 6 months, they don't count as, it's ridiculous. You're looking for work for 6 months. You can't find it, so you're no longer part of the people looking for work, even though you'd be more than happy to get a job. But it's the way everything is manipulated, and that's been going on for a long time. I'm not saying that's a new matrix, but people don't understand what's actually going on. This notion that the economy is going along great and there's been a recovery, it's the worst recovery in modern times. We haven't had a single quarter of GDP growth above 3%. And by the way, when you have artificially low interest rates that have been, kept down there by the Fed, again, to promote a political agenda, you have 0% interest rates. How do you boost the economy? You can't do it by lowering interest rates. You're at zero, basically. Well, you certainly want to raise taxes to what we were talking about earlier. Well, I don't think that's going to help. The only way you can do it is by lowering taxes. And you look at the two candidates and what the economy is going to do. One raises, one lowers. When you can't do anything with interest rate policy anymore and that kind of fiscal policy, there's only one place you can go, and it's a disaster when you've had a bad recovery already. So these are scary times, and you need someone that actually has some real common sense and who's actually created businesses to talk about job creation. Thank you.
It was an honor to hear your father speak 3 times in Reno area. It's an honor to see you today. I have a son who's 52 years old who's never voted. He registered. He's voted Republican for the first time.
Like I said, I have that from so many people, day in and day out, that have said that. Again, they've been disaffected by the system. So I think that's where a lot of this surprise is going to happen on November 8th.
But I don't think your father should bring this up, but what bothers me is George Soros. He has funded the riots in Chicago. He's funded Black Lives Matter, and Hillary's daughter was married in his home. I would like to have the Republican Party bring some of this out.
Well, I think they certainly have, but it's a question of who gets the coverage, and there's a lot of craziness going on with that and what's going on. But again, I think we're about bringing a voice back to the regular people of this country, the ordinary Americans, hardworking Americans that made this nation so great, and not having people like that run it. And again, I think it's interesting, and there's probably some irony to the fact that the brash billionaire from New York is the guy that's giving a voice back to the people. But he's able to do that because, again, he doesn't need this job. He's not bought and paid for. He doesn't need anything from anyone. So I think he can run an honest campaign. The other side's never going to do that. You see that in the WikiLeaks stuff that's coming out. No, you can't possibly cancel that speech. Oh, countries in the Middle East giving Bill Clinton $1 million cash birthday gifts. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. If it was happening from the other side, if liberals, if a conservative was doing this or taking those kind of favors, the media's heads would be exploding. But it is different. It is a double standard, and hopefully we're able to have a big enough soapbox that people are finally hearing that message and getting it.
We're going to take 2 more questions, and then we have to cut it off.
And we already have one.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Oh, sorry, we have someone with a mic?
yes.
All right, yes, sir.
Great, thanks very much. I see most definitely you are on message today.
Thank you.
I need you to carry something from your dad for me. I need your dad to stay on message for me. I need him to stay on message tomorrow. I need him not to be distracted by the moderator. I need him not to be distracted by what's going to be thrown at him.
Fair enough.
Please, I need him on message. Thank you very much.
By the way, we have the question over here in the mic. I'm sorry, they've been waiting.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Donald. My mother lives in Idaho, in Boise, and she says there's an awful lot of Trump supporters up there.
Oh, yeah.
They're all talking about you, but they want to see your dad real bad.
Well, listen, I was in Boise about 2 weeks ago, 2.5, 3 weeks ago, maybe. Myself. But when you're in this race, when he's really a one-guy operation, right? The other side has all these people traveling all over for him. It's a different kind of race, and I think in Boise we're up by 30 points. And so while everyone in Boise wants to see him there, I think we have to be in the places that we're about tied. It's triage. You got to go where you need it most, where you can move the needle most. It's why we're running a campaign like a business. We're not spending money on ad buys in Boise, just like we're not spending money on ad buys in Texas, because our buddies aren't making commissions on the ad buys like the other side is probably doing. Again, we're going to run this like a business, like we'll eventually run the country like a business. Get rid of the inefficiency, get rid of the waste, the fraud, the abuse. And maybe if we can do that, we can have a surplus for a change. We can actually take that money and we can use it to take care of our vets. We can use it to educate our kids so we're not number 30 behind a long list of third world countries in education, so that we can promote and have a great American future for that next generation. Because right now we're hitting them $20 trillion in debt, By the way, and growing rapidly. It's doubled in the last 8 years. If we ran our households like Washington runs this country, we'd all be living in the streets. And we don't want to have that anymore. That's not going to happen on our watch. So your point is well taken. We'd love to be in Boise, but maybe we'll do that after November 8th to go and thank them for all of their support. So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
I have one more quick one for you. Being a rather outspoken person, I think the world of your dad, I'm going to support him totally. Secondly, whenever people make comments to me about the fact that he says stupid things and all this stuff, I say, you know what? You got to understand something here. He is not a polished politician. He doesn't go with just what is politically correct. Ask him to please keep that up.
You will, and I think that's the difference between him and so many of the other politicians out there. Each one of these people, you get them off script for 1 second, then they're lost. He's not a robot. He's not a robot. He's going to say what he's thinking. He's going to speak his mind. He's going to have an opinion. He doesn't need to run a focus group to have an opinion. He wants to hear what Americans want to think, and not how we message it to cover everything. And we're going to change policy. He's going to do it based on what the American people want and what he believes in his gut. So, and I think that's why he's so relatable to a lot of people, because they're saying, you know what, he's saying the things that we're all thinking, but don't have the ability to say, or the things that we're going to get criticized for saying, even if it's the truth. So he's never going to stick his head in the sand and pretend it's a problem that's a real problem is the problem. He's going to keep fighting for us. So thank you again. It's been great to be here.
Everyone, we're going to ask everyone to stay in your seats. Mr. Trump Jr. is going to walk around the room. Please stay in your seats. He's going to come around and start giving everyone and then have hot flex on it. So please stay in your seats or stay in your seated area. He's going to walk around.